Welcome back to Al-Sharq al-Awsat Lana, our Middle East, the region for all of its peoples. And I'm Dan Diker, president of the Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs. And I'm here with our senior fellow, Khaled Abu Toameh, dear friend and colleague for many decades. It's wonderful to be back here in this JCFA JNS podcast partnership. Wow, great studios, Khaled. And we, since leaving to our Caribbean island holiday for a number of months, if not a little bit longer, we're back. And we are back to a Middle East region that, since we left it, has really detonated into chaos. And today we're going to talk about the Gaza Riviera, fantasy or fact, or something in between. You've spoken about it, you've written about it at length. We've discussed it for hours, and there's a lot of confusion out there, Khaled, especially in the West, about the Trump vision for Gaza. How realistic?
Dan, it's a great vision. And turning Gaza into Riviera of the Middle East is also a nice idea. It reminds me of all the talk about turning Gaza into the Singapore of the Middle East, into the Hong Kong of the Middle East. When did we hear that? Remember? Immediately after
2005, after the Israeli withdrawal,
disengagement from Gaza. There are many people with good intentions who want to help the people in Gaza, who want to turn Gaza into a very nice place, into a comfortable place, into a safe place for Palestinians. Now, the question here is this plan practical? Does it work? Look, if you talk to many Palestinians in Gaza, off the record, in private, they're dying to leave. One guy told me, Trump doesn't have to announce a plan to get us out of Gaza. All you need to do is just open the border with Egypt, and you will see people rushing to leave. I have no doubt that people would love to, many people there would love to leave Gaza. Let's not forget, Dan, that before October 7, long before October 7, actually in the years, I think, between 2016 or 2015, and until probably a few months before October 7, we saw many Palestinians fleeing Gaza. Actually, there were tens of thousands of Palestinians who fled Gaza. It became a whole industry smuggling people out of Gaza. We even heard of cases where Palestinians drowned on their way to Greece, on their way to Cyprus. Their final destination was Turkey or Europe. As I said, is it practical? Does it work? Look, there's a problem here. If it comes from Trump or from the Israelis and the Americans in a very public way, you're going to find difficulty in having Palestinians cooperate with it. Such a plan requires two things. Number one, coordination with the host countries, with the countries that are going to receive these Palestinians. And the best thing to do it is behind the scenes. Don't embarrass Egypt and Jordan publicly. It doesn't work. And number two, you need to engage the Palestinians over there, to talk to them, to see who wants to leave and find mechanisms or methods of or ways of facilitating their departure from the Gaza. And you need to also make it clear that this is not permanent. If you're going to make it look as if you are planning to kick them out and you're not going to prevent them from coming back, no one will cooperate with you. So there are many things that, could ensure the success of this vision. But as I always say, in the Middle East, you have to be very careful. You have to work behind the scenes. And the U.S. has many allies in the Arab world. Work with the Saudis, work with the Qataris, work with the Egyptians behind the scenes.
Where the Americans, as you say, behind the scenes, where President Trump and his team would do well to adjust their approach, is to really do a lot more behind the scenes in packaging this the way it really is in Gaza, which is a humanitarian relocation plan to give Gazans a better life and a better start. And the biggest fans of this program, as long as it's packaged, positioned, and presented properly are the Gazans themselves. There's no question about it. The West has completely misunderstood what this program is, because there's been this sort of traditional what they call the colonialist propaganda machine that's been targeted at the Jews, at the Zionists, from the beginning of the 20th century, when Chaim Weizmann comes from Manchester together with James Arthur Balfour, and they couldn't figure out what the difference was between the Jews coming back to their ancient homeland in the Middle East and the Brits who were administering the Middle East. Now we have a situation in which people think that Gaza is that the Gazans are indigenous to Gaza, when it only was a way station in between all of the empires and all of the wars that have been fought in the Middle East. So the Gazans are not particularly wedded to Gaza, but basically identify themselves in their DNA as refugees.
Yeah, but then the way it was presented, first of all, it caught the Palestinians by surprise. And secondly, they did not see a real plan. They only saw talk by Trump. So the way the Palestinians and other Arabs see it is, there must be a conspiracy here. Maybe this is an American-Israeli conspiracy to carry out, quote unquote, ethnic cleansing. So it backfires. The way it was presented, without coordinating it with the Arabs, with the Palestinians, without working behind the scenes, makes it look as if there is some kind of a conspiracy to displace these people, to kick them out permanently, as I mentioned earlier. Now, the irony is that when you listen to Palestinians in Gaza who go on the record now, they're saying, no, Gaza is our homeland. We're not going to leave our homes. This is our land. But in the past, they used to say, no, we are refugees. We are waiting to go back to our original homes inside Israel. So now they're saying, Gaza is my home. I'm not leaving my homeland. Gaza is very precious to me. It's where, So it's complicated. But if I were President Trump, I would choose people or advisors who understand the Middle East, who speak Arabic, who know the nuances, who understand Arab and Muslim culture.
Political
That's very
culture.
Important, yes. Yeah. But, it's not enough to sit with the rulers of Qatar and the Bahrain and the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia and Egypt even, and listen to what they say in English. You will never get the right picture. It's time for the Americans to work harder to understand the complexities, how complex the situation is. You need to prepare very well for any initiative you come up with, but do not make it, in an abrupt way. It doesn't look good. It looks, as I said, more like a conspiracy.
Right, that's a very important point, because the Middle East rests on conspiracy theories between Arab states, between families, between clans and tribes since the establishment of Saudi Arabia itself. So it's an inveterate part of the culture. It's not only having to do with Israel and the United States, but your points are so well taken and culturally mindful and important. Now, another component of this Gaza challenge is the only way that Gaza will come out of this thriving, if you will, ultimately, is if Israel actually continues its military counter-terror operation and actually does a military control and administration of Gaza.
Dan, there are two ways to get rid of Hamas. One is by military force, and so far there's only one country that can do it, Israel. And secondly, if the Palestinians revolt against Hamas, which is very highly unlikely under the current circumstances. The Palestinians are not going to revolt against Hamas for two reasons. Number one, they're afraid of Hamas. And number two, Hamas still enjoys support in Gaza. So if you revolt against Hamas, you will be accused of treason. And that's something that Palestinians are very wary of. They're not going to go there. Now, going back to option number one, which is military force. I said immediately after October 7, that, if you want to remove Hamas from power, you need to create an alternative government in Gaza. If I were Israel, I would have gone into Gaza, reoccupied Gaza immediately after October 7th, set up a temporary military government in Gaza, and announced to the world, I'm not here to rebuild settlements. I'm not here to resume control over the Palestinian population. I'm here because I was attacked. I'm here because I have hostages here. And I will leave only after I achieve my two goals. Number one, removing Hamas from power. And number two, releasing the hostages. Had Israel done what I just said back then, reoccupied Gaza, reestablished a military government in Gaza, that would have saved the lives of many soldiers and many Palestinians also. Why? First of all, when you announce I'm the government in Gaza, what does that mean? Hamas is canceled. It's finished. So in the eyes of the population, there's a new sheriff in town.
And there's law and order, and
There's an address.
There's an address.
Also very important. When a Palestinian in Gaza sees that there's a new sheriff in town, this Palestinian will feel confident enough to walk up to you and say, Hamas is there, the hostages are over there. But we did not see any of that. Now, Israel should have done to Hamas what Hamas did to the Palestinian Authority in 2007. In 2007, Hamas staged a coup against the Palestinian Authority. They dragged a number of Palestinian Authority people to the streets, Fatah people, they lynched them, they threw some of them from the rooftops, and they immediately announced, we are the new government in Gaza. Now, that mere announcement created the impression among Palestinians that the Palestinian Authority is over, and even the Palestinian Authority surrendered. So it's all perceptions. When people feel there's a new government, that's it. They will go to that government. I'm not saying they're going to become pro-Israel and Zionists, but at least they will know who to talk to. Sadly, we are 16, 17, 18 months after the war, and we see that Israel did not achieve these two goals, its two goals. Why? Because Israel relied on pinpoint operation. The Palestinians saw the Israeli defense forces move from one area to another. They were not sure. They did not understand what is Israel's strategy. They saw the IDF in northern Gaza, then they saw the IDF move to the center, then to the south.
There was no permanence,
Exactly.
and they didn't take one particular area. They didn't take northern Gaza, stay in northern Gaza until those two strategic goals were achieved, and then they did cut Gaza into three sectors, but they didn't clear and stay and control.
Yeah. Why should any Palestinian walk up to an Israeli tank and say, hey, I want to help you? They're not going to do that because he knows that this tank is going to move in 2 hours, 3 hours, in 1 day or 2 days. But when you have a permanent presence, when you have offices of the IDF in Gaza City, in Khan Yunis, and you're sitting there, you send a message, I'm here for the time being. Now, make no mistake, Dan, I'm not saying let's go back to the days when a Jew was running the schools and the hospitals of the Palestinians. I'm not saying, let's rebuild settlements in Gaza. But I'm saying that had Israel taken full control of Gaza from the beginning, it would have been much better, and it would have even shortened the war. Israel would have achieved at least most of its goals. But here we are now, and the impression is that Hamas is still there. Hamas is in control. Another important point, Dan, is that when you are the government in Gaza, you control the humanitarian aid that comes into Gaza, and this is very important. Israel did not do that. Israel was maneuvering in Gaza. The Israeli defense forces were moving from one place to another, while the humanitarian aid that was coming into Gaza was being taken by Hamas. And that's what allowed Hamas to continue ruling Gaza. So I believe that there were many mistakes from the beginning.
Well, now I think we're at a moment of correction because Minister Ron Dermer is in the United States. The reports are that he's discussing Israel's administration. I sometimes fear I all the time fear the use and the misuse of the word occupation, because occupation usually refers it refers in terms of the laws of war when one sovereign power occupies another sovereign power, the way we've seen in the Second World War and beyond.
This
but this is different.
This is a very different situation. Israel was attacked. Israel was invaded. The state of Gaza breached an internationally recognized border and came into Israel. Now, I'm saying that you had the right to go into Gaza, reoccupy Gaza temporarily until you achieve your goals. And you don't leave Gaza the same way you left Gaza in 2005. This time, when the international community comes to you, to Israel, and says, leave Gaza, you say, okay, of course I want to leave Gaza. I'm not here to stay forever. I'm not here to control the lives of these Palestinians. I came to achieve two missions: to remove Hamas from power, destroy their military capabilities, and to release my hostages. After I achieve them, I will leave. But before I leave, I'm not going to repeat the mistake I made in 2005 when I left and I created a vacuum in Gaza, and Hamas came into this vacuum and took control over Gaza. So Israel, before I leave Gaza, I want to know who is going to be in control of Gaza, who is going to be on the border between Gaza and Israel, who is going to be on the border between Gaza and Egypt, and who is going to manage the affairs. You set conditions. And then the world will say, okay, the world will feel pressured because you're telling the world, I'm planning to leave, but I have conditions. And these are legitimate conditions, especially in the aftermath of what happened on October 7. If you want to repeat it, Israel needs to get guarantees that October 7 will not recur, will not take place again. Hamas has said there will be a second and a third and a fourth October 7.
Absolutely. And in fact, I think where Israel could do a much better job in terms of narrative driving is it's about the hostages. There's no country on the face of the earth that would allow or that would concede or be otherwise accede to 251 Jews, Christians, and Muslims in its territory, invaded, kidnapped, tortured, raped, in captivity for 17 months. It simply wouldn't be allowed to happen. And that is the narrative. There's nothing else that should be driving this story than locating and freeing 59 hostages. Everything's dependent, as you say, on that. And I think that is taking control of the narrative. And what has happened is that the narrative has been pointed at the Israeli government in terms of its responsibility primarily to bring them home, as opposed to the responsibility of the international community led by the United States and the free world on international organizations to pressure Qatar to mobilize its influence on Egypt and Hamas itself. That's where the focus should be. And if there's going to be any resolution in Gaza, it has to begin with removing Hamas from power altogether. Otherwise, people are not going to leave Gaza with Hamas in the driver's seat.
Not only that, Dan, but no Arab will come to Gaza to rule Gaza or play any role in Gaza as long as Hamas is there. So you need to insist on the demilitarization of Gaza. You need to insist on disarming Hamas, destroying Hamas's military capabilities if they don't want to disarm. And then we start talking about the next phase, about who is going to manage Gaza. There will be no progress as long as Hamas is there. And don't tell me that it's okay to keep Hamas as a political force. There is no difference between a Hamas politician and a Hamas military commander.
Like Hezbollah, same thing.
Excuse me, if we want to go along these lines, and I heard recent statements by Steve Witkoff, President Trump's Middle East envoy, where he said we don't rule out the possibility that Hamas could be politically active in Gaza. Excuse me, are we going to go back to square one right now? If we are going to go along these lines, then Yahya Sinwar was also a political leader. Yahya Sinwar was the chairman of the Hamas Political Bureau. And he's the mastermind of the October 7. So there should be no drawing
differentiation.
Of
There's no
course.
differentiation.
Look, Hamas should have no role in Gaza. That's the only solution. If you're going to make concessions to Hamas, then it will only be a matter of time before they resume their jihad against Israel.
The other component here is the mistake that many make in the West in thinking that the Palestinian Authority, which is basically the handmaiden of the Fatah, the main faction of the Palestine Liberation Organization, that they could actually manage a transition and a new Gaza, which is absolutely impossible because they completely failed to manage the areas under their control by international mandate in Judea and Samaria, the West Bank.
First of all, the Palestinian Authority was in Gaza between 1994 and 2007.
And how did that work out?
Under the Palestinian Authority, we saw the emergence of different groups in Gaza, not only Hamas.
Palestinian Islamic Jihad, the popular
resistance committees.
That's right.
The Ahrar and all these groups, they operated under the Palestinian
Even
Authority.
Salafist groups.
Salafi groups also, they all operated under the Palestinian Authority. Was the Palestinian Authority able to prevent suicide bombings? No. Was the Palestinian Authority able to prevent the launching of rockets from Gaza? Did the Palestinian Authority disarm Hamas? Did the Palestinian Authority crack down on all these jihadi groups in Gaza? No. Was the Palestinian Authority able to prevent the smuggling of weapons from Egypt into Gaza? No. The Palestinian Authority was there, yes. They paid salaries. They ran they even had security forces, by the way. I don't understand.
Under Mohammed Dahlan.
Yeah, they were there. What did they do? The day Hamas staged a coup, many of them ran away or surrendered to Hamas. And some of them even defected to Hamas. They did not fight. They did not put up a real fight against Hamas. So the assumption that, the Palestinian Authority would be able to enforce law and order in Gaza is wrong. Why? If they are not able to enforce law and order in Jenin refugee camp and in Nur Shams refugee camp and in Tulkarem refugee camp, how do you expect them to confront thousands of Hamas and Islamic Jihad masked men on the streets so in Gaza? The Palestinian Authority in late December, early January, carried out a 42-day operation in Jenin refugee camp against 60, 70 gunmen, belonging to the battalions. These are Iranian-backed groups that have popped up in the northern West Bank in the past few years. I didn't see the Palestinian Authority able to end this phenomena of the mass groups. Eventually, the Palestinian Authority pulled out, and I talked to some senior Palestinian Authority officials, security officials, and they openly admitted that the operation was a failure. Now, what happened? They pulled out of the camp, and the IDF came into the camp to do the job that the Palestinian Authority was unable to do. So I wouldn't rely much on the Palestinian Authority. Mahmoud Abbas is not that stupid, by the way. He's not going to go back to Gaza when Hamas and Islamic Jihad are there. And secondly, whoever comes to Gaza will have to bear the responsibility of rebuilding Gaza. And if you go to Gaza and you don't have the resources and the funds, the people will kill you. They will come to you and say, okay, you're here to rebuild. What are you going to do for me? Can Mahmoud Abbas rebuild Gaza alone? There has to be a major plan. Okay, we have the Arab plan that was announced.
The Egyptian broker plan in Cairo. Let's remember that the Saudis and the Emiratis sent their foreign ministers. The leadership didn't really show up. And as has been pointed out by you, I've mentioned it. Our friend Dalia Ziada, our Egyptian analyst at JCFA, has mentioned it. There is no mention of what to do with Hamas in the Egyptian plan. So it really, Hazem, our friend Hazem Al-Gabr, also mentioned it.
They're ignoring the elephant in the room.
Right.
They did not even condemn October 7. They did not even hold Hamas responsible for the war. They said, okay, we're going to invest $53 billion in Gaza. And the source of the funding is the United Nations and international institutions. They did not even commit. They did not even make an Arab commitment to contributing to the rebuilding of Gaza. That's number one. Number two, this the Arab conference, the Arab League conference, was held not out of a genuine concern for the Palestinians. It was held in response to Trump's vision. I mean, one gets the impression that the Arabs are worried about Trump's vision because they don't want to play any role in helping the Palestinians. Jordan and Egypt freaked out when they heard that, they might have to absorb hundreds of thousands of Palestinians. So they came up with this plan just to appease President Trump and make it look as if, okay, we do have an alternative. Please, Trump, hold off, your plan, or abandon it, or don't. But look, I think the mistake that the Americans made, or President Trump made, was that he specifically mentioned Jordan and Egypt. This should be a pan-Arab issue. What about Qatar?
What about Syria?
Okay, maybe Syria does not have the economy, the financial capabilities and the resources to absorb. What about the wealthy country? Qatar. Well, Qatar has been supporting Hamas and supporting the Palestinians in Gaza. Why don't we go to Qatar and say, okay, take 100,000, for example? Why isn't there pressure on these wealthy countries that are able to do it? Another point, Dan, one of the reasons why some Palestinians in Gaza opposed Trump's vision of removing them from Gaza is because they heard that he wants to remove us to Jordan and Egypt. No way. Give us a better offer. Send us somewhere else. What is there to do in Jordan and Egypt? The economy is bad. We're not going to find jobs. So that's why I said, he made a mistake by specifically mentioning these two countries. And these two countries, they freaked out. The whole meeting, we should not take it seriously. This is just lip service. And that's all what the Palestinians have been getting from the Arab world over the years. The Arab world does not provide them with financial aid other than lip service and meetings and issuing statements of condemnation and solidarity. This is all nonsense. It's not going to help the Palestinians. This is not a real plan. You cannot rebuild Gaza without removing Hamas. The Arab League should have issued an ultimatum to Hamas. You have 1 week to cede control over Gaza, hand over your weapons, and leave. It should have been an ultimatum, a warning. As clear as that, Dan.
It seems now that what we're seeing is that Egypt is actually threatening Hamas in Egypt, that it's going to expel Hamas as a reaction to the West and Israel's rejection of the Egyptian plan.
Yeah, but this is like too late, too little, too late. Why didn't they do it 18 months ago? Why have you been waiting all this time? And if they deport the Hamas leaders from Egypt, okay, they'll find,
But what is the big fear, Khaled? Let's say the Sinai is 60,000 square kilometers. It's many, many times the size of Israel, just in northern Sinai. Now, with a multi-billion-dollar package that they actually talked about during the Abraham Accord Peace to Prosperity workshop in Manama in Bahrain, they were talking about $55 billion to the Palestinian Authority and other Arab, and Jordan and Egypt, by the way. So what would be the real fear from an Egyptian point of view if they had a massive input of U.S.-led, Western alliance-driven international economic development for, 250,000, 500,000 Palestinians in northern Sinai with all the security guarantees that Egypt required?
That's why I said from the very beginning, Dan, that there should have been behind-the-scenes negotiations with the Egyptians about this, and not throw it in their face. The last thing that President Abdel Fattah Sisi wants is to be seen as part of the U.S. Israeli conspiracy to move these Palestinians into Egypt and turn Sinai into an alternative homeland. Things cannot be done in public. It does make sense, by the way, for the Egyptians to open the border and receive some of these Palestinians, at least on a temporary basis. There are people living in tents in Gaza. Why can't Egypt just open the border and give them temporary shelter? There's a lot of, Sinai is very big. Many of these people also have relatives on the other side in Rafah. Rafah is a divided city. In El Arish. But, as I said, I think it has to do more with politics and with how Sisi is perceived by his own people and by the Arab world. Now, there's another problem here, Dan, which is how can you implement this plan when the Arab League and the Arab countries and the Palestinian Authority and Hamas and everyone is condemning it openly and warning against it and saying it's a very dangerous plan? And so the rhetoric also has to change. Palestinian leaders, Arab leaders, are warning about this Trump plan and calling it ethnic cleansing, and it's a very dangerous, and it's a new Nakba. So you're not going to find Palestinians who will, or Arabs even, who would want to be part of it when you have all this incitement against this plan.
So the only pathway forward here is to proceed quietly and cautiously and change the story, change the narrative behind the scenes, and empower a number of Arab countries with carrots and
we should look at it as a humanitarian issue and not as a political issue. I mean, how many Syrians fled Syria during the civil war?
Look at the Libyans, by the way, fleeing. They've been fleeing by the thousands to Italy.
So why is it that no one wants to offer the Palestinians temporary shelter? I mean, how many Arab countries do we have? Not one of them has offered to help, to absorb some of these people, at least on a temporary basis. We're not talking about resettlement, by the way. We're not talking about turning Sinai into an alternative Palestinian state or homeland or something like that. But there's a humanitarian issue over here. Hundreds of thousands of people are living in tents. They've lost their homes in Gaza. They've become displaced people. And that's how we should present it. Don't present it as a political plan. It's a humanitarian issue. Where's the UN in all of this, by the way? I keep asking myself, what's the UN doing to help these people?
The UN has defaulted and bankrupted itself morally, strategically, in every possible way. And in fact, that's something that we'll talk about in our next session is the bankruptcy and the moral collapse of the United Nations when it comes to the Palestinian issue.
And the hypocrisy of the United Nations and other international institutions, the double standards. I mean, they're obsessed with Israel. They claim they want to help the Palestinians, but they don't do anything to help the Palestinians. Condemning Israel day and night does not help the Palestinians. That's not a way to help the Palestinians. There are people now who need real help. So UN, please step in and help these people.
So as we end here, the message that we are conveying today is repackage, reposition, and rename this what is a humanitarian mission to help the Palestinians, to stabilize and secure the Middle East. Because at the end of the day, all of the compasses are pointing at the source of the subversion, the terrorism. And that is the Islamic Republic of Iran and the IRGC and the nuclear threat coming out of the Iranian regime. That is really why the Hamas Riviera is critical, because it allows the region to address the most pressing problem that is threatening the entire region, not just Israel.
And this is the time. We need to seize the opportunity. This is the right time now for changes, real changes in the Middle East. You cannot continue like this. Otherwise, it will be a revolving, a vicious cycle. We will be revolving, in a vicious cycle. And it's time to end it. And it's time for the Arab world to assume responsibility and their duties towards their Arab brothers, their Palestinian brothers. As I said before, statements of condemnation are not enough, and plans on paper do not help the Palestinians. This is the right time. If I were Trump, I would go to Sisi and say, open the border. Let these people in, at least on a temporary basis. We'll help you financially, But no one is doing that. I mean, the Egyptians are doing the exact opposite. They are, building fortresses, and they're to prevent Palestinians from leaving Gaza. So I mean, it doesn't make sense.
It's time for action.
Yep, time for action. That's what I say.
Time for action in Gaza and across the Middle East.
And it's good not only for Israel but for the Palestinians also,
and the rest of the region and the peoples of the Middle East, and that's what we're doing here. Al-Shaqqa al-Sadlana, our Middle East, moving from chaos to security, stability, and hopefully prosperity. It's been a great program with you after a long hiatus. And here we are, we're back together and delighted to be with you.
It's a pleasure, Dan. Thank you very much. And I see this partnership as very important. And I hope the messages we convey to the Arab world, to the West, they reach their destination. We are trying to connect the East with the West.
Yeah, connecting the Arab East, the Middle East, Israel, and the West.
Yeah.
JCFA in partnership on this podcast with JNS. Delighted to be here. And thanks, Khaled, for having this conversation.
Thank you.